Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today on our session with current students and recent alumni studying the humanities at Lund University. My name is Audrey Savage, and I work at the International Marketing and Recruitment Office as an International Communications Officer. So I'll be moderating the panel today, and I am also especially excited for this session because I am an alumna myself of the humanities at Lund University. I studied the Applied Cultural Analysis program. And with me today, we have 4 current students / alumni who are with us to share their experience of their studies at Lund. So I'll give you guys a chance to introduce yourself, what you study, where you're from, all that good stuff. So Giulia, perhaps we'll start with you.
Yes, sure. So thank you for having me, Audrey. My name is Giulia and I'm Italian. I'm a part of the Human Rights Studies Master Program, 2nd year. And I'm currently at the 3rd semester, which is semester without lectures and exams. We can use this semester to either join a trainship or a field study or extra courses. So this is what I'm doing at the moment.
Great, thanks. Katja?
Hi, Audrey again, and hi, everybody. Thank you for having me today. As I said, my name is Katja. I'm from Georgia, and I'm an alumna of Linguistics program, Masters of Linguistics. And my specialization is cognitive semiotics, which is the new science of meaning in relation to mind and media.
Great, thanks. Lee?
Yeah, hi, my name is Lee. I am studying applied cultural analysis like Audrey was back in the day, but I am currently a 2nd year of 2 years, and I am originally from the United States.
Perfect, thanks. And Samaneh?
Hi, my name is Samaneh, as you can see, and I study visual culture, and it's my 2nd year. I'm from Iran, by the way. And this is my 3rd semester, in which we have 2 more courses before doing our thesis.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys. So just a few housekeeping things before we jump right into the questions for our audience. If you want, this session is completely for you to answer your questions, of course. So you can post your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. And if someone has already posted the same question you have, you can use the upvote feature, and that will send your question to the top of the list so that we can make sure that that gets answered. So please feel free to post your questions there. Please keep in mind, though, that we will not be answering any application questions during this session. Since we're joined here by all current students or alumni, we're going to be focusing on their experiences of studying the humanities and what their programs were like, not necessarily on how to apply or specific things about the application. So if you have questions about applications, please join one of our other sessions. We have over 60 different webinars happening throughout this semester, many of which are specifically only about how to apply. So there's a lot of other things to jump in and make sure you don't miss that information. But today we're going to try and focus just on the student experience studying the humanities. So with that being said, I think we can jump right in. And first, I'd like to start by just asking each of you, what is your favorite thing, or what's your favorite thing in Katja's perspective of studying your program or studying humanities at Lund? Perhaps Samaneh, we can start with you.
Sure. Well, I really love my program, so it's very difficult to choose one. But I think I would say that it is very international. Like, we have people from all over the world, literally. So the discussions we have in class are very interesting. And this is something that, I don't know, you cannot always have. And I think this is my favorite thing about it, honestly.
Great. I know that's something that really sets apart the humanities, is that quite a lot of our programs take in students from all different kinds of disciplines, and of course from all over the world. So it's great to have those mixed discussions in the classroom. Thanks for sharing. Lee, how about you?
Yeah, I would probably echo what Samaneh has said. I really appreciate as well that my program is very international and also quite small. There are 21 of us total, which is a good size because I feel like it allows for everybody to actually get to know each other. And related to that, I think that maybe this isn't unique to the humanities, but I feel like the applied cultural analysis program is very intimate. I feel like I know my professors well and can go to them with questions whenever I want to. It doesn't feel like a very hierarchical relationship. It just has a very kind of family feeling to the program.
Definitely. Giulia, how about you?
Well, Lund is a human rights city, so I couldn't choose any better city for studying human rights studies, the master program. Well, I can say that Lund University is most famous for a similar program that is called International Humanitarian Law, if I'm not mistaken. But the human rights studies is the new version of this master, which is also open for non-law students, for non-law graduates. So I think, I don't know, it was really needed, a program like that. And I think it's, even though it's still new, it will get more popular. And I think, yeah, through the semesters, I've always enjoyed anything they have offered, any lecture, any seminar. So I don't have any complaints so far.
Wonderful, thanks. And Katja.
I can definitely relate to everybody's experiences. And one thing that I wanted to point out is this feeling of family that Lee also talked about. I mean, I consider Sweden my home because of Lund University. If Lund University wasn't here, I probably wouldn't call Sweden my home, because Lund University has, I mean, we have such close relationships with the teachers, students themselves too, that it really feels like family. I love every single wall at Lund University. And it's to a great extent to the professors and the relationship that we have with them. And the other thing that I love about my program is that, like Giulia said, it's quite new, which means that it's open to experimentation, to trying new things. And they're always very open to feedback, which, I mean, everybody is open to feedback in Sweden, but especially when the program is new, because they're trying to develop themselves.
Wonderful, that's so great to hear. So Lee, you talked a little bit already about the size of your program, that's around 21 students, but I'm curious about that for the rest of you. What does your class sort of profile look like? Around how many students study your program? And do you find it's mostly international students, mostly Swedish students, or a bit of a mix? How about Giulia?
It really depends from semester to semester and from course to course, because you can even apply to solo courses. So I have been in some classes with the people that I've never met again, honestly. But yeah, the people that I meet the most, that I consider my class, it's we are like 22 people. So it's a small class, which I find it very nice. Because when I was studying in Italy, we were like more than 400, 500. So you don't really get along, you don't really meet and know your classmates. So I don't know, it's a very welcoming atmosphere. And it's, I don't know, it reminded me a bit of high school. So I think even though it's small, maybe some people could complain, but I think that for me, it's the perfect size, yeah.
Great, the better parts of high school, I hope. The parts we all like to think
Well,
about.
we are most Europeans, at least in my class. I can say that we don't have many people coming from outside Europe. Maybe we have a couple of people from Brazil, but most Europeans, and not too many Swedish people.
Okay, interesting. Samaneh, has that been your experience as well?
Well, for us also, it depends on the courses, because we have single course students, which actually we remained in touch with them. They were very nice people. But I think the core number is around that, like 22, 23 somehow. Yeah, and I think that's a good size. Even smaller would be nice.
Great. And has most of your cohort been international, mostly Swedish?
Yeah, mostly international. Like, I don't know, I think we have 5 Swedes or something.
Okay, great. And speaking of slightly smaller, being maybe better in some people's mind, Katja, I know the linguistics programs are quite small. What was your experience with sort of class size and class makeup?
It very much depends on the course. It very much depends on the term. We usually have people joining from other programs, from visual culture, for instance. We have had students from there. But it seems like classes are, I mean, the max limit seems to be 22 or so for everybody. But then sometimes when we have smaller classes, maybe 15, 16 students. And we have been usually very international. Swedish students are maybe 5 or so, even fewer quite often. Most of them are usually international students.
Great. And I know we've touched on this a little bit, but I'm wondering more about the relationship between the professors and the students in each of your programs. I think that's something that is always quite surprising sometimes to some students from around the world who might be used to a more hierarchical structure of relating to professors. And here in Sweden, of course, it's quite much more informal. But would anyone like to share your experience of what it's been like getting to know the professors, or if you're able to sort of speak to them in a more casual way or reach out to them for help outside the classroom? If anyone would like to share.
I can go. Oh, sorry, Katya, you wanted to say something?
We can start with you, Samaneh, and go to Katja next.
Well, as Katya mentioned, they're very open to feedback, and like this was an experience that I had. Like I went to my professors with ideas and suggestions, and they all listened, and they discussed it among themselves, and like it's you feel like that you are helping them build something, like you're included in the building the program. And also, like, we had a lecture actually today from a previous like student from many cycles back, and she's now a postdoc, and she said that she designed the course that we are having because she thought they needed this course and suggested it, and they let her to design it. So in that sense, it's really interesting and heartwarming.
Absolutely, that sounds great. Katja, you also wanted to share?
Yeah, yes, we have said that people are more open, and they talk to each other without regard to hierarchy in Sweden. But I have studied at 2 other universities in Sweden, and I have noticed that at Lund University, this is even more so. You're even closer to professors. They're your friends. They encourage this engagement in a dialogue, and they look at you as their peer scholar, not as a student who has these bright ideas that can be insightful for them. And like Samaneh said, they encourage you to be involved in designing the programs, in the development of the entire program. And that, like I said, they're very close. I consider my teachers as my friends.
Oh, wonderful. And that brings me to another great thing I wanted to talk about, which is what is the flexibility like within your programs as far as being able to tailor what you're studying to your specific areas of interest? Have you found that the class schedules or sort of the projects are quite set in stone, or do you have that flexibility that if you wanted to sort of take things in a specific direction or take extra elective courses, for example, is that something you have the option to do? Lee, we can start with you.
Yeah, I feel like that is one of the things that really characterizes my program in particular, is that there's an enormous amount of flexibility. And I think it makes sense when you consider that, like many other humanities programs in Lund, the people in my cohort aren't just coming from different places in the world, they're also coming from really different academic and professional backgrounds. So it's almost more like applied cultural analysis is this prism through which whatever it is that you're interested in and whatever direction that you're going in, you all get filtered through this same thing for 2 years that's called applied cultural analysis, but you have so much flexibility about what it is that actually interests you academically or as a researcher, but also flexibility about what you want to do with the program, after the program, where you want to go in terms of internships. It is hard for me to imagine a more flexible master's program than this one.
Absolutely. And I would say that echoes my experience with applied cultural analysis as well. We had even the students in our internships did it all over the world and had the flexibility to really focus on anything they wanted. We had a student who went to Canada, to Palestine, to Ireland to study and do elective courses in their thesis work. So definitely. Katja?
Yeah, the same applies to cognitive semiotics and linguistics, because in cognitive semiotics we have people coming from linguistics, we have people who have done music, or in my case it was dance that I was very interested in, or marketing, and specifically for my interest because dance was something that the department hadn't worked with before. My supervisor and I devised a course together so that we could both learn a bit more about dance and how semiotics works in dance and so on. So there is a lot of flexibility along with the elective courses that we can take.
Wonderful. Samaneh or Giulia, anything to add there about flexibility within your programs?
In terms of the courses, we are not like, we have a set schedule of like having 2 courses each semester. But in terms of the course exams, like we have different, how do you say, like each semester, each course, we have a different thing to hand in, and it's not like exam papers. So these are like things that prepare you for professional work outside the program and also research work. So in that end, it is so broad that you basically can choose anything to work on. So it's always very interesting and sometimes difficult to choose what to work on because you can choose from everything.
Wonderful, thank you. That brings me to even another point, which is relating to work after your studies. How do you feel your programs have prepared you for sort of entering into the different fields that you can go on to study after? Or Katja, in your example, you have gone on to work after, of course. What kind of opportunities were there for networking or for preparing you for that after your studies? Katja, perhaps we can start with you since you've actually graduated.
Yeah, of course. In regards with networking, you do network within the faculty because we have dedicated seminars held every Thursday. So you get to meet lots of scholars, not only from Lund University, but from all over the world. You get the opportunity to develop yourself as a researcher. But outside the academia, I think what my program has prepared me for is this microscopic understanding of communication, how meanings are created depending on the context, and then I can apply these to lots of different kinds of contexts, be it advertising, marketing. So I guess it's this microscopic understanding that my program has prepared me for in regards with communication.
Hey, Giulia, how about you?
Well, we didn't have seminars like Katja had, which I think it's pretty cool. Maybe I can suggest it to our program from the responsible of our program. But even though my master program is pretty theory-based and research-based, I can say that during the 3rd semester, which is the one that I'm attending now, you can actually combine theory and practice because you can choose how to spend this semester. So you can either find an organization, NGO, whatever you are interested into, and spend 1 semester there and to carry out an internship, or to do field study by your own or in a university, or to be a research assistant, or to do extra courses. So I think the practical side that is missing maybe during the 1st year, which is lecture, is so much research based, and you learn how to do research, which is useful. What's missing, it then is going to be found in the third semester. For example, now at the moment I'm doing an internship, so I can see what I have studied being applied in something more practical.
Very cool. What are you doing your internship with, if I can ask?
I live in Lund, but I commute to Malmo, where I'm doing an internship for an NGO that supports, it's going to be a tough topic, this is human trafficking victims and people in prostitution. So yeah.
A very important topic, though.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, great. And Lee, how about you? I know you also recently did an internship within your program, right?
Yes, I just finished it, actually. I was working with and on a pilgrimage trail more in the north of Sweden, or the middle of Sweden, but it feels like the north relative to Lund. Yeah, I would echo what Katja and Giulia have already said. And I think that one of the important things for me relative to where I was coming from in the States is that I do feel like I'm being prepared well for a career in life after this program, but I think that the responsibility really largely falls on the student to navigate that path for themselves. Applied cultural analysis is the kind of program where you could go passively through it and get the degree and do the work that is necessary in order to get the degree, and that's fine. But if you want to be really actively preparing yourself for a career afterward, whatever that career is, nobody's going to hold your hand through it. Like, it is up to you to take the resources that are available and send that email to that person you'd like to talk to, or reach out to this place that you think you'd like to do an internship for or do trial research for. So, it's a very independent research culture.
Absolutely. And one thing that I know I really enjoyed when I was studying at the humanities was actually the facilities. And I know we haven't been able to be there as often as we would like for the last year. But of course, we do have the main two humanities buildings, Lux and Sol, two really beautiful buildings to study in. Does anyone, now that we're transitioning back to campus, find that you're getting to use the facilities a lot? We, of course, have our own humanities libraries in both. What has your experience been like actually studying? If anyone would like to share. I guess, Katja, you actually were able to be on campus compared to these three, so maybe you could share.
Yeah, I graduated just before, or rather, I finished my experiments right before the pandemic broke out. And I did manage to use our wonderful Humanities Lab. I conducted all my experiments there. There's a lot of up-to-date technology there that you can use: electroencephalography, eye tracking, or in my case, it was BioPack measuring respiration and perspiration. So you have access to all this wonderful technology, which gives you lots of freedom to conduct rigorous research, which I know that in my country is not something that students have access to so freely too. And of course, studying at the campus, it's wonderful, spending time with your friends, hanging out at the library until quite long. Yeah, it's wonderful, and I'm very sorry that many students didn't experience that.
Absolutely. I think now that we're transitioning back supposedly by November 1st to be back in person, hopefully by the time anyone is watching this, by the time you arrive in Lund, Corona will, fingers crossed, knock on wood, be a thing of the past, and you'll be able to study fully in our facilities. But absolutely. Katja, your research there sounds really interesting. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Was that for your thesis?
Yes, exactly. It was for my thesis that I worked on for 2 years. It was very extensive research on how spectators, or rather what spectators experience when they watch dance without music. And so what I did was I tested 20 participants while they were watching two kinds of dance, contemporary and classical ballet. I tested their perspiration rates, respiration rates. Then they were interviewed. they were also asked a separate set of questions. And all of these were analyzed both qualitatively and statistically. So as you can imagine, it was a lot of work. But it was a very exciting study. We found 2 levels of consciousness. I mean, subconscious, pre-conscious, and conscious levels, which correspond to kinesthetic empathy in different ways. But that's too deep to go into.
Wow, and I think that's a really important point to bring up, that quite often, and for good reason, the humanities are all thought of as purely qualitative subjects, but the Humanities Lab does give a really great opportunity for students to kind of pair that qualitative research and knowledge that you learn in the humanities with some more quantitative skills and research ability there. So I think that's a great thing to point out, that you can get it really involved in the Humanities Lab and bring that sort of more, I guess, what you would say, traditional science aspect into your research. That's great. Awesome. And for the other 3 of you, of course, you're soon going into the thesis semester in the last semester. So I'm wondering how that process has been for you. Do you feel it's something that you've been preparing for throughout your studies, or that your programs have been talking to you about as you go? And what are sort of your plans going into that semester? Perhaps, Lee, we can start with you.
Yeah, so one of the things that has been highlighted a lot in my program is we currently, in the first half of the 3rd semester, we do this work placement or internship that from a pretty early stage of the program as a whole, in talking about this work placement, it's emphasized that it's a good idea to try to pair your work placement with what you do for your thesis. Obviously, you don't have to do that, but pretty early on, we've discussed sort of in that way strategies to think about how to do the thesis. And, you know, it's a balance, right? Because on the one hand, you want to have a good amount of freedom to think in the beginning without having to think about the final product and what it has to be, which I think the program has done. But now we're kind of arriving at that point where we're all starting to think about it a little bit more. And the good thing is that I feel like I have the support systems I need to suss out, now that I'm done with this thing, the work placement, what does that mean for the thesis? There's not a set answer to that. I can continue doing exactly what I have been doing. I can tweak it. I can go in a different direction. And I appreciate that flexibility even now that we're in the fall semester.
Great. Samaneh, has that been your experience as well? How do you feel they've been preparing you as you go along?
Well, we sort of, everybody brings up the thesis study, like when you study a master's, like it's something that keeps coming up. But like before the summer, we actually asked for like the thesis description of like as an exam description sort of thing. And since the beginning of this semester, our professors started talking about it and like how we can approach it. And as I said, we can basically choose anything. Also, but also something that was very useful for us was that we had some of the alumna, yes, if I'm using the correct word, that they also shared their personal experiences. And this is something I think is very valuable, like in practice, like, I don't know, like have people as a support system, if I can use Lee's phrase, and how to navigate yourself with the practical stuff and how to choose and how to go on and lots of this stuff. And we also had a lecture specifically about it last week. So yeah.
Great. And Giulia, anything to add there from the human rights studies perspective?
Well, it's similar situation with Lee and Samaneh, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. During the first year, we were focusing on doing lecture and seminars, but towards the end, they have requested us to write a small draft, at least to have in mind the topic and nothing specifically, but just to have an idea of what we were interested. So they could match us with a supervisor. So now we all have one supervisor that is gonna help us during the last semester. And yes, it's similar with Lee. You had to choose an internship. You had to choose something to do during the third semester that it should be related to your thesis, but still you have also the possibility to change if suddenly you have a different idea coming to you. So I think it's pretty flexible, but it's all a warm up. From January, we'll all start to, be focused and writing. So we will see.
Wonderful. So I also, as we're about halfway through our time now, just want to remind the audience that if you have any questions, you're welcome to post them in the Q&A and we'll get those answered for you. Otherwise, we'll keep going with our own questions here, but of course, we're here to answer any questions you have as well. So another thing I'm wondering about is how your experience in general studying in Sweden has compared to your experience studying in your home country. Are there certain things that have really stood out about the academic culture that were quite different, or something that surprised you a lot when you arrived in Sweden? I see Katja smiling quite a lot, so maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, I guess two things. One is that in Georgia, if you're a talented student, you're usually very active, having your hand up all the time and taking up a lot of space. And that's how teachers know that you're smart. But here you might have the brightest student in class, but you might never know about it because the students do not take up so much space. They only raise their hand if they really have something very important to contribute with, which I think is great. And the other thing is that in Sweden, we do very thorough, very solid research. It's very, very well-grounded, which is not the practice, unfortunately, yet in my country.
Okay, great insights. Giulia, how about you?
I can say that what struck me the most is the exams part, because when I was studying in Italy, but it's not just my perspective, in general of all my friends, all the exams were mostly oral exams, and it's usually you had a list of books you had to study, and the questions they were, do you remember this? So you just had a mnemonical kind of learning and process. Instead here, I remember like during the first course, they were telling us, but we don't want to know about the author. We want to know what you think about the author. So you really had to invest time and not just studying, but also to re-elaborate everything in an analytical way and to have your own perspective of the author of what you were studying. So if you're not used to, and you're just used to memorize, at first it's difficult because you have to learn a new way to study. But then you can totally see the difference because you're not just learning, but you are also able to produce something that is unique, that is your point of view about one specific topic. So yes, this was something new for me, but I think I'm very thankful for having this new skill thanks to Lund University.
Absolutely, that's a great point. Samaneh?
I think I should agree with Katja about the competition part of studying here, because like not only on the side of students and the side of the teachers, it's usually not like that the teacher like emphasizes on someone who has a good point and like bring them up to the center of attention, and it feels good, and you don't feel the pressure to do the competition and all that. And also the group work here is also very interesting, and like very, sometimes it takes a lot of time, but also it's very interesting because you talk and until you all get into a certain mutual agreement about something, and it feels really good. Nobody is left out in the group work.
Definitely. I saw foreheads, mine included, big nodding to the word group work. That's definitely something that is very emphasized in Sweden. And Lee, what about you? How is academic life compared to the US?
I would definitely also co-sign what Katja and Samaneh have said, and Giulia. The thing that stands out, just to add, is that compared to the United States, I was a little surprised by how little emphasis there was on grades, on letter grades. Plenty of our courses are pass-fail, and even the courses that aren't pass-fail, the letter grade is usually determined by one paper that you write at the end, and it's not here's a long numerical outline of all of the things you did right and wrong and all of that. And in addition to that, the students, particularly the Swedish students I've interacted with, seem a lot less stressed out about grades. And also part of the culture here is that if you do fail a class, you can just take another go at the exam. They let you take multiple tries. They want you to pass. And so there's a lot less of emphasis on grades in a negative way here.
Definitely. And I would even add in, I guess, from my perspective as an alumna of the humanities, that for me, I was very surprised coming in at the amount of time spent in class in Sweden versus what I was coming from a US context, that you generally study one, maybe two max courses at a time for a shorter amount of time. So I found that for me personally, I really liked that you were able to focus on one topic and really hone in on that, even if it was for a shorter time, because I was used to taking 5 or 6 different topics, sometimes even in completely different disciplines, all at the same time, and getting to really focus your mind on, this is the class I'm taking now, this is what I need to be thinking about, I think was also something that was very surprising for me, but in a good way. Awesome. Well, we've talked quite a lot now about our courses in the humanities, which of course is the point of our session here today, but I also want to talk a little bit about Sweden in general and what it's like to be an international student here at Sweden, or a student in general. So perhaps if you'd all like to share, what was maybe the biggest culture shock for you when you first arrived in Sweden, or the biggest surprise, not necessarily about studies, but actually about just life in another country? We have a lot of thinking faces. Maybe, Katja, you can start.
Yeah, I think one of the first ones was taking off your shoes when you visit somebody, which is something we don't do in Georgia. It's actually considered rude if you ask your guest to take off their shoes. But I realized how just smart and practical and nice to the host it is to take off your shoes so that you don't scratch their floor, you don't make it dirty. And I was thinking, why don't we have this? It was a real nice experience.
That's a great point. Samaneh, how about you?
Well, I would say my biggest culture shock was the queues for everything. You have to wait for everything and everything goes slowly. It was first very frustrating, but then I came to appreciate it because things will go in place eventually. You just have to wait, and it's not a chaos in that sense. So this was the biggest shock for me.
Definitely. I think everyone new to Sweden at some point has had the experience of going into a store or a office somewhere and standing around for a while and wondering why no one ever calls on you. And it's because you forgot to take the little piece of paper with your number on it. So absolutely. Giulia, what was your biggest shock coming to Sweden from Italy?
Well, I think winter is the first thing that you need to deal with. But I'm not going to complain about weather or the lack of light. What I want to say is that when it was my first winter, I was seeing from the window all these people walking under the rain without the umbrella. And I was saying, well, why they're doing so? I mean, in Italy, it doesn't rain so much. Of course, winter is winter. It's not that it's warm and hot and it's good, bad weather as well, but it's not every day. So if it rains, you just don't go out because it's okay not to go out one day. But when it's raining so often, you have to cope with it, and you still have to, do your things and enjoy your life. So it was hard for me to have this mindset. But now, for example, all my umbrellas are broken, so I don't even want to buy a new one since they get broken all the time, and I don't care anymore. I know that in order to survive winter, you need to keep doing your things, even if it's bad weather, even if it's cold. Otherwise, you will be stuck for so long. So yeah, for me, was the first winter was the toughest. Now I'm getting used to.
Absolutely. I know I had never heard of the idea of rain pants before I arrived in Sweden for the first time, which for those of you in the audience who don't know are basically a rain jacket for your pants specifically if you're biking or something, because the rain jacket, of course, doesn't go that far. So you quickly pick up on those kind of things that are good tidbits to know how to handle the winter and the wet, for sure. Lee, what was your biggest cultural shock?
I'm kind of hesitant to say this because I'm not sure how applicable it will be to people who are coming to Sweden later. But to be honest, my biggest cultural shock had to do with Corona. I moved in August 2020 from the South in the United States, and the transition that summer of being in a place where people weren't wearing masks everywhere in Sweden, but they also weren't having heated arguments about masks all the time, and because it was the summer, there were a lot of people spending time outside in not crowds exactly, but that was just a big. It took me a little while in that first week to be like, okay, you're in a different culture in terms of how they're navigating this, and I think that also extends in general to the attitude about Corona. Felt much more, I don't want to say relaxed, but it just seemed like people were not treated. I feel like there's no, I keep thinking about the fact that we're recording this and I'm trying to choose my words carefully, but it's like in the States, I remember that summer, there was such a feeling of crisis all the time. And then when I came here, it's not that people weren't talking about it and taking it seriously. And it's not that there weren't guidelines and recommendations in the stores where you went, all of those things existed. But people's attitude felt less apocalyptic about it in a way that was really, really nice, I have to admit. Even though whenever I talked about it to people back home, they were all like, what? I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely relatable to quite a lot.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, of course.
Related to that, I think there was this thing that stayed with me from one of the webinars after being accepted, before coming to Sweden, that university staff kept saying that we trust our government. Everybody who was asking about the guidelines and stuff and like how the Corona is going to be handled, they kept saying that we trust our government, the guidelines will come. And then when I came, I understood what they meant. They trust the government, so it's like, it is what it is. And everybody is just going on with their lives, just listening to the guidelines. And most of them are not even like orders, they're like suggestions, which is interesting.
Absolutely. It's definitely quite a difference than a lot of countries in the world to live in a place that has a lot of public trust in the system and that the system works well. But that's one of the great things I think about living in Sweden, is that we can trust that most of the time the government's working in the best interest of the people. Great. And speaking of kind of getting on with our lives now that we're able to go out and about more with less restrictions, I'm wondering what everyone does in their free time outside of classes. I know we have some very interesting things that everyone's involved with here, so I want to give you a chance to share about some of the things that you've been involved in student life wise. So I know we have some writers in our midst, Giulia and Samaneh, if you'd like to share about that. Maybe Giulia, if you'd like to start.
I think it's Katja who was writing, right?
Ah, yes. Sorry, my mistake. Katja, you're writing. Yes.
I was writing, yeah, last year when I was yeah, last spring, I was writing with Lund. It was mainly to train Swedish even more. Yeah. And right now I'm actually involved in dancing. I've started dancing again, contemporary jazz, and it's real nice. At Malmö Dance Academy, I could recommend it to people if they're interested in dance.
That's very cool. Awesome. And Samaneh, you are writing for UPF, correct? Would you like to share what that is?
Yeah, I've started being part of the webzine committee of UPF, and we have like weekly discussions, which are awesome. And because the whole thing is in line with my studies, it's very helpful, and also the people are very interesting there. So I would definitely suggest that if somebody is interested in writing, they should take a look at UPF in general.
Great. And Lee, I know you're involved in a few things, but that also kind of tie into helping with academics. Would you like to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I work as a study support mentor for other Lund University students who have learning difficulties or study related issues that they want another student to sort of work with and help facilitate for them. And then I also am a mentor through a program called Supplemental Instruction, or SI, where I facilitate weekly sort of meetings, collaborative discussions with students in the year below me in the Applied Cultural Analysis program. And outside of that, I will just throw in there that Lund is not all that far from Copenhagen. And one of the other things that I've been doing now that the border is open is I go into Copenhagen to do drawing classes, which I find to be a nice break from student life.
That's very cool. And I think that's a nice point as well, that for your program and my previous program, Lee, the Applied Cultural Analysis program, now that Corona has sort of allowed us to again, that program actually has a partnership with the University of Copenhagen. So in a so-called normal year, every other week, you actually go to the University of Copenhagen to have class with the students there. And on the off weeks, they come to Lund. So you not only get to experience Copenhagen a bit more, but also experience a whole different cohort of students to bring perspectives to the class. So that's something I know we didn't touch upon earlier, but I think is a really cool part of that program to bring up. Awesome. And Giulia, what are you up to in your free time outside of Lund?
Well, I'm slowly getting back to my normal life. So I'm not doing anything special, but you know, all these little things that before were so normal, now they are not so normal anymore. So everything is, I don't know, I'm in a honeymoon stage that anything is fine for me. Like yesterday I went to a quiz night in Malmö in a pub. Maybe it seems something silly, something little, but you know, just the possibility to be able to go there and to spend some time with people and to be able to hug some friends. So I don't know, I'm not doing anything special because I'm quite busy with my internship at the moment, but I'm going to the gym also. For example, before it was not that easy. You had to pre-book your spot in a course, and there were very few spots available, so everything was harder. So now it's just getting everything better, and I don't know, I'm happy to enjoying a normal life again.
That sounds wonderful. I think we're all sort of getting to that stage as well, trying to find our new normal. Katja, you mentioned that as part of writing for Lund, that helped you with practicing your Swedish. I know that's something that a lot of students wonder about when they come to Lund is, are you going to need to learn Swedish? Is that something that you can get by with just English or not? So that's something I want to ask everyone about, but also Katja, you in particular, I know have a great resource for this that if you'd like to share a little bit about what you do regarding helping others with Swedish.
Yeah, of course. To start with, I think you can absolutely get away without Swedish because everybody speaks English here. But it's important to speak English because job opportunities are broader in that case. You get to experience culture on a totally different level. And I actually run a YouTube channel, considering that I have over 10 years of experience as a teacher and I have a master's degree in linguistics. And I am crazy about grammar. I run this YouTube channel called Learn Swedish with a Linguist, if you're interested. It's actually a very fast and effective course, tried and true on my students. And it can really help you to learn Swedish and integrate yourself into the Swedish society, because it's not only Swedish that I teach people there, but rather I give them tips on how Sweden works, Swedish culture, work culture, and so on. So Learn Swedish with a Linguist. That's the YouTube channel.
That's great. If you have a link, actually, you can paste it in the chat if you want, and then anyone who's joining can look that up. And while Katja looks for a link, what about the rest of you guys? Have you found that you really feel that you need to learn Swedish to get by in Swedish society? Or are any of you taking Swedish courses in any way, or focusing just on the English side of things? I guess I'll just let whoever wants to talk. Lee?
Yeah, I would definitely co-sign everything that Katja said. You do not need Swedish in order to get by here in Lund, but it is very, very nice to have a certain amount of Swedish that you can use. It's almost like it's a form of politeness, I feel like, to show that you're making an effort to learn the language as best as you can. And I do think that it also helps a lot with just reading as you go about your daily life. You know, you're going to have to sooner or later learn the Swedish words for everything in the grocery store. So you can either do that passively, or you can, you know, find a course either online or in real life. I've done all of my Swedish learning through platforms online, which has worked fine for me. And I'm now at the phase where I'm sort of like asking my Swedish friends with my tail in between my legs to have conversations in Swedish with me as practice, which they've been very helpful and kind to oblige.
Definitely. And I think I'll also just share briefly that there is a program through the Swedish government called Swedish for Immigrants that everyone who comes to Sweden for more than a year is eligible to sign up for, and is free. So that's something that can kind of also help you, at least with that beginning stage of learning Swedish. But it is something that you need to sign up for quite early, because there is a bit of a wait list when you arrive. So that's good to keep in mind. And a lot of free resources online, as you've mentioned, Giulia, like Katja's channel and different websites and things that can help you with that. And we also do have a program through Lund University called Swedish as a Foreign Language, which is actually a standalone program. It's more a course package, not actually a degree program, but that's a 1-year focused program where basically by the end of the year, you are considered, if you pass, fluent enough that you could apply to study a university degree in Swedish fully. So you're considered fluent in Swedish after finishing that program. And it does reside with the humanities. So great to point out there too. Katja, I see you have your hand up. Anything to add?
Yeah, I wanted to add about SFI, Swedish for Immigrants. When you're studying SFI, Swedish for Immigrants, you have an opportunity to do internship for about 10 days, either at a kindergarten, school, or a retirement home, which is something that I did for 10 days. And you couldn't even compare my speaking skills. I didn't dare to speak Swedish before the internship. And when I came back from there, I was extremely good. And then one more tip that I have is when you finish Swedish for Immigrants, then you can write this placement test. They test your skills in listening, reading, and writing. And depending on the level that you show there, you can actually skip over a lot of steps, which is something I also did. And I saved a lot of time. So do that. It's very good to do.
Those are great tips. I didn't know about the internship. That's very cool. Great. Well, we have about 5 minutes left. So as we wind down here, I think if anyone in the audience has a question, feel free to post it. But otherwise, I think I want to wrap up by asking each of you why do you think students should study your program at the end of the day? What do you think makes your program unique? Or if you met someone who is considering applying, what would you say to them? Why do you think they should consider studying? Maybe Samaneh, we'll start with visual culture.
Well, I would say, well, I said before, I love my program. So if you're interested in transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary work and like having enough freedom to hop around, and you like theory, and you probably like to continue research, probably in PhD level, this program is a really good place to be because it helps you in all of that, and it is very interesting. And yeah, I guess that's it.
Great, thank you. Giulia, Human Rights Studies?
Well, if you have a passion for human rights and you want to live in a human rights city, then I think Lund is the best option. Of course, you have to have a passion for research because it's going to be, the topics are many, it's pretty broad and pretty theoretical. So of course, don't expect to do much practical. You are going to do it in the third semester, but if you have a perspective of doing research or being a PhD student, then that could be a good master program for you. And it's new, so of course it's going to be better and better. So I think next year, if I will meet new students, I'm sure they will tell me new things that I will say, oh, well, it was missing in my master. It's good that you can have the possibility to do so. So yeah, I'm sure that it's a good master program, and Lund is a great city to live for 2 years. So I think it's going to be a great experience.
Absolutely, thank you. Lee, what would you say to an applied cultural analysis prospective student?
I'm kind of inspired by what Samaneh said, because what's unique and interesting about applied cultural analysis is that it is a humanities program, and the academic disciplines that it's drawing most from are anthropology and ethnology. But it's also a program that really places a lot of emphasis on working with clients and working outside of academia. And in that sense, it is quite unique because you're really combining coursework in theory and an academic perspective on what it is that you're studying, with this idea of how can you translate those tools to an office, to a tech hub, to an NGO, to literally you name it. It can be almost anything. So I think it's a really good option if you know that you're somebody whose brain thinks in a humanities-ish way, for lack of a better way of describing it, but you're someone who doesn't necessarily think or know that you want to do research in the academy for your entire life, or even if you're just somebody who isn't sure where you want to end up completely, but you know that you have a skill set in the humanities. I think it is a program that really presents a lot of different opportunities for how you can choose to live your professional life.
Definitely, I would agree with that as well. And Katja, we'll end with you. As an alumna of linguistics, what would you say to a prospective student?
Yeah, if we focus on my specialization, cognitive semiotics, it is a transdisciplinary science of meaning making. For example, in my case, I was very much interested in linguistics, but at the same time, I was passionate about psychology, philosophy, dance, marketing, and linguistics was just not enough for all of those interests. And then I found out about cognitive semiotics. So if you are somebody who has all of these broad interests like me, then cognitive semiotics, and if you're interested in meaning making, of course, then cognitive semiotics is a great field to go into. And at the same time, if you're keen on using both qualitative and quantitative research methods, then it's perfect. And of course, you have great opportunities to continue your studies with PhD and work on anything that you want to work on. But if you want to go outside academia, I'd say that you are prepared for a very deep understanding of communication. I like to think of communication. There are master's degrees in communication studies, but I feel like they give you the surface, while cognitive semiotics gives you the very basis, the very roots of what communication is about. So I think if you're interested in deeper understanding of communication, or if you want to go into transdisciplinary research into meaning making, and cognitive semiotics is a very exciting field to be in.
Wonderful. Well, with that, our time is up today, but I just want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us and listening along to our conversation. And I especially want to thank you for our panelists for being here today and sharing about the experiences in your program and studying humanities. It's been really cool to get a sense of how all of these programs are quite similar in some ways and very different in other ways, and hear about your experiences. So thank you so much, everyone. And I want to wish everyone a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you, Audrey.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.